not Christmas anymore. So at this point you'll have watched the first two videos where I've been delving into the original files for the Ocarina of Time with Lyrics medley. I'm actually recording this bit of this video after those two videos have gone out. Because an interesting thing happened in the comments after I posted part 2, which is all about how I took the Hyrule Field music and I chopped it up into bits and had to rearrange them because we didn't think that in the order that they were originally presented it really makes for a good song. Well, it turns out that the reason why it felt like that was the thing that we needed to do was because what we were doing was we were, calling it up on YouTube and listening to it and then going, it's not as good of a song as we thought. It's got lots of good bits in it, but they don't really make a song, if you see what I mean. Well, it turns out that the version that you can find on YouTube or on various other soundtrack albums is not the way it's actually presented in the game. In fact, it is cut up into those little bits that I was talking about. It is chopped up into those different passages, and the game actually rearranges them the way I did on the fly, depending on what you're doing. It's completely reactive to what the player's doing and what the environment around them is doing. Now, I remember thinking back when, in the 90s when I was first playing the game, when it was new, that the danger music, as I called it in the previous video, did seem to play when I was in danger, when I was coming up against a monster or whatever it happens to be. And I wondered if, for the soundtrack album, they just decided where, canonically, that should go in the music and just sort of put it there. But it turns out that actually the whole song is like that. The part that I referred to as the serene bit, that plays if you're near water, apparently. So theoretically, if you had enough time on your hands, it's possible that you might be able to play Ocarina of Time and do a certain set of things in a certain order, so that it actually replicates the order that we used in the Ocarina of Time medley. And then you can sing along. So that's really, really interesting, I think. I think so, okay. Maybe you don't, I don't know. While we're here, I might as well talk about something I glaringly neglected to talk about last time. I talked about constructing the music, but I didn't talk about writing the lyrics, which, when the song is called da-da-da-da with lyrics, is a massive oversight. As for the later stages of writing the lyrics, there's not much to say, because it all went roughly how you might imagine. I wrote some bits, Brent wrote some bits, we sent them to each other, we changed them a little bit, but I think you'll be interested in the very first step. See, having decided to cut the song up into bits, we were still in the process of deciding what order to play the bits back in, and we were trying out one or two different running orders to see which one turned out to be the best. And as we were going, we wanted to try and figure out how to write lyrics for the melodies that were emerging as we were, putting the different bits together. Because with a song like this, that's essentially a kind of a 10-minute long musical in and of itself, there needs to be not just words that fit the tune, it needs to progress properly. There needs to be an actual sort of through line in the narrative of the story of the video, and that can make your job harder when what you're already trying to do is figure out how to make rhymes happen where in tunes that weren't written to have rhyming lyrics written into them. I was the first one who worked on the lyrics for the Hyrule Field section because, that was going to be my section. So I had to come up with some idea as to how to settle into the rhythms and the shapes of that tune and figure out where the rhyming words would go in the shape of the melody. If that sounds confusing, I mean, imagine a really simple rhyming poem. A da-da-da-da-da, a bibbidi-bibbidi-ba. A da-da-da-da-da, a bibbidi-bibbidi-ba. Well, you know where to put the rhyming words in that one, don't you? You get an A at the end of the first line, and an A at the end of the second line, and then a B at the end of the third line, and a B at the end of the fourth line. Or if you want to shake it up, you can go A, B, or whatever. It's up to you. It's completely up to you. Whereas, in a slightly less uniform, slightly more complex sort of a rhythm, you have to figure out where you want the rhymes to go. So, for example, take the part that I do that starts with run round wild and free. What we came up with in the end starts off really simple, like that example I just gave you. Run round wild and free. Dive into the sea. And if the music carried on, da-da-da-da-ba, a-do-do-do-do-ba, then it would be easy for us, but it doesn't. It goes run round wild and free, dive into the sea, da-da-da-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. What do you do with that? Where do you put the rhyming words? You have to decide, you have to come up with something. And if you want an example of what I'm talking about from my previous work, go to the end of Wiggle He 2, the part that starts flipping heck, look at this, what's he only gone and done? Probably about 11 minutes in, 12 minutes in, round about there. It's when I pull out a little Santa hand puppet and start playing with it. Listen to the words that I do there. Maybe listen to it a couple of times, get used to them if you're not already. Then look up on YouTube Making Toys from Santa Claus the Movie, and you'll see how Leslie Brickus wrote lyrics to that same piece of music 30 years ago. And by the way, when I was writing my lyrics, I hadn't heard his lyrics. They're the official lyrics, but they're not in the film. And you'll see that not only have we written different lyrics, he's actually used a completely different rhyming scheme. The actual rhyming syllables happen at different times in the tune, and he doesn't get the word bioengineered in either. What was he playing at? So, back to Ocarina, we went with run round wild and free, dive into the sea, climb a tree and generally explore the flipping country. So you can see how, you know, sometimes you have to just pop a little rhyming syllable in here and there. Well, that's what we ended up with, but actually we tried a couple of slightly different versions before that. And the first thing we did, and this is the point, this is the part I think you'll be interested in, the very, very first thing I did when working on the Hyrule Field tune at all, is I recorded a total nonsense version. Absolute nonsense. I started out, actually, trying to write real lyrics for it. So it starts out as a primitive and bad, but recognisable version of what I did in the end. So it goes something like,
Hyrule was something you observed from a bird's point of view. That's all you could do.
So a similar thing, I'm talking about how you used to look down on it from above, but it was a little bit dry, it was a bit impersonal, you know, Hyrule was something one observed. That's not very good, at least not for the kind of song that we were trying to do, where I needed to sound impassioned and fanboyish. But very quickly after that line, I just stopped trying to write lyrics anymore, because I realised I didn't have a handle on what the shape of the tune was, and where these, as I say, rhyming syllables needed to go. So what I did was I just sang nonsense, because I realised that as I tried to actually write the words about like sensible things, I was really wrestling with the difference between what I was trying to say and the shape I was trying to fit those sentiments into, but it was holding me back. It meant that I couldn't do either of those things well. So I needed to be completely used to the shape of the space these words needed to fit in. So I just kept going, saying absolute nonsense, but with a rhyme scheme in mind.
Crumpets and moments of delight are in sight if you're sure you ought to ignore all the signs that the time's gone away. Hop onto my head and we shall be away.
With a shape in mind, with a structure in mind. And then later, we took the actual things we were trying to say and we fitted it into something like those shapes. Not exactly like, because by the time even of the next demo, we'd actually changed the order of the music round anyway, so it didn't stay this way. But I just think you'd be interested to hear how this demo went. So, if you will click the box, you can hear the nonsense demo for Ocarina of Time, which was, I'm sure, the actual absolute first thing I sent to Brent, other than the confrontation scene, which was the first thing that we made, and obviously I'll be telling you more about that in a future video. So there you go. Go and listen to that if you're that way inclined. And another thing I think you might like to listen to that I left out of the previous video is yet another demo, which I, again, sent to Brent, because the process involved sending demos to each other and going like, oh yeah, that's a good bit, that's a good bit, deciding what to keep, deciding what to throw away. Well, in the first video, was it the first one or was it the second one? I showed you a demo that I'd sent to Brent with quite a bit of the song, where I was kind of going through it and sort of singing it, doing both parts, to show him what the song was sounding like, how the composition was coming along, and how it matched to the lyrics that we'd already written. And as you will have noticed, some of those lyrics changed as a result, because we came up with slightly better ideas, or we felt that this or that would sound better in context, having, you know, heard it in demo form. Well, before we made that demo, the one you've already heard, and after the silly demo that you heard just a minute ago, there was this demo, which you should click that box there. This one isn't terrifically interesting as far as I can remember, but, you know, since we're being completists here, I thought you might want to listen to that as well. So this is kind of the midpoint. We've worked out some of the lyrics, not all of them, not many of them, and you'll be able to hear how this demo kind of fed into the other demo, the first one that I played you the other day. That, I think, is all from the lyrics corner for now. Looks rather like the book corner, doesn't it? So thank you for joining me on this little interruption, and next time it's going to be part 3, as promised, the shop theme.